read. I kept going with that for many years, and eventually I branched out to whole books made of comics and graphic novels. When I was in high school in the 2000s, I know that dates me, manga from Japan started becoming a thing, that they were translated and put in bookstores, and I read them alongside American comics like Marvel and DC superhero stuff. And I never really stopped. Everybody comes out with new series and they're interesting, and I enjoy talking about them with everybody. I led an anime and manga club in Baltimore County, and now I'm here in PG.
Hello, I'm Dréa. I currently am transferring, so I started at the Greenbelt Branch Library, and we'll be going to Akakik with Amanda. Yay! So when I first started getting into comics was when I had moved from Mitchellville all the way to Clinton. So it was just a big change in my life, and I had a lot of free time. And at the time, my mother was working at the library, so she would work her shift, and I would be there. And so I would just take a stack of these huge books and read them one by one until it became just normal for me just to always read comics. And it would be anything from graphic novels that were historical to biographies to Yu-Gi-Oh, anything, just to keep the mind going. And I've never stopped reading.
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren and I'm from the Oxon Hill branch. I got into comics when I was very young. I remember also reading the comics in the newspaper and wanting to be able to draw those comics as well. So taking the time to sit outside with like my markers or my crayons and trying to do the same, like create my own comics at home. I think around 5th grade is when I saw Sailor Moon for the first time and also learned that it was a manga and was super surprised. And so I started reading graphic novels and manga around that time, and now here I am. I still read them to this day.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Oxley. I'm the librarian 3 at Greenbelt, and I'm also a founding member of the graphic novel committees for Black Eyed Susans for grades 4 to 6 and 6 to 9. I've been reading comics since the newspapers, definitely Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side, all those great comic strips. And then I got a little older, and my first favorites were Archie and Betty and Veronica, and kept on reading through X-Men and got into the Sandman, and then I got my hands on my first manga, which was Battle Angel Alita by Yukito Kishiro. I traded some anime tapes. This is what we had to do back in the 90s. So I had some VHS tapes that were highly coveted, and I was like, okay, I'm going to trade you this for your manga series. And I'm proud to say I read Battle Angel Alita all the way until it ended just a couple years ago. But I'm still an avid comic reader. I literally have it tattooed on me. So I'm very fortunate to be a librarian.
When you say you have it tattooed on you, are you talking about, okay, she's going to show us. Oh my goodness.
So I have a library tattoo, and coming out of the little red bubble is 741.5. 741.5 used to be the designation for all graphic novels because we used to not know what to do with them, so we categorized them as art books. And then the little red speech bubble is a nod to the spine label, which is a red speech bubble for graphics.
Hi, I'm Storm. I work at the Akakik Public Library. I got into manga and graphic novels in 1998 when Tenchi Muyo aired on television, as well as Pokemon and Sailor Moon. I recently actually got into American comics and like independent comics when I started going to AwesomeCon with my mom just I think the first time I went was in 2014. So mainly it was always anime and manga, and then recently I'm trying to delve into more like American stuff. So
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Storm. Okay, so now we've heard from everybody. And so the way that our session is going to be run today is we're going to split it up into different segments. First, we're just going to offer some general book recommendations. And then we're going to go into some award-winning books, specifically focusing on some of our Black-Eyed Susan, which are the Maryland award-winning books that students can vote for. Segment number 3, we're going to talk about genre discovery. What genre will we discover today? Find out soon. Then we're going to kind of compare and contrast manga and anime a bit and have a lively discussion. And then we're going to talk about comics and their significance to the LGBTQ plus community. And we have some really good recommendations for you there as well. So for right now, we're going to go ahead and just have each of our members give a book recommendation. And this one was a free-for-all. So what you're going to hear will be something that they really, really love.
Hi, so my book recommendation is a manga that actually got made into an anime movie. It's called A Silent Voice. I really love this one. It's about a grade school student who is hearing impaired, and it starts off when she's going to school and she gets bullied a lot, so bad that her mom has to pull her out and switch her to another school. Flash forward years later, one of her bullies runs into her at a community center, I believe, and he starts to try to become friends with her and make amends because he feels so guilty for what he was a part of when she was in grade school. And because she's hearing impaired, she actually does sign language, which is one of the aspects I really love about this manga, because I've been kind of interested in sign language since I took a class in high school. So it's really, I love anime and shows and stuff that use ASL. And so he actually learns it to try to speak with her more and try to become her friend. And it's really emotional, but it's really, really good. It had me crying both in the manga and the movie, and I highly recommend it.
So today I'm going to talk a little bit about Kinsey. It was created by Sebastian Kadlec or Kadlec. I think I'm going to say his name wrong, so I apologize. It was written by Kit Steinkellner, and it was illustrated by Emma Steinkellner. So Kinsey is about newly 15-year-old Lupita, who discovers that she's been graced with superpowers on the day of her quinceañera, but there's a catch. She only has 1 year to use them. So first off about this story, this is an original brown girl superhero, and that is definitely one for the win. I also think that Kinsey brings to light a really interesting point of discussion on how it is that we laud and appreciate actual superheroes and their efforts to save humanity, but don't appreciate the little ways that people without capes step in to help one another. So I really, really loved this book.
Hi, my comic for this time is The Backstagers. It is an original comic about a boy named Jory who goes to a new school and wants to find a club to join. And he tries to join the drama club. However, the actors are a little stuck up and they don't like him as much, but he ends up joining the crew, which has a magical backstage that can transform into anything they need to help the production. It's a very fun ensemble cast, and it's something that has a lot of LGBTQ themes, and it's very enjoyable. Currently, there are 3 volumes, 2 of which I have here. I believe the series is closed, but there are some tie-in novels coming out for middle grade.
Hey, I'm going to talk about Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel is a more classic supers but it's anything but traditional. Ms. Marvel is the first Muslim American superhero. So she's a teenager, Pakistani American, from Jersey City, New Jersey, and she gets powers that are similar to Captain Marvel. So she goes by Ms. Marvel. So she can stretch and she can make her limbs big, and she has, you know, great friends. And I love this second issue called Crushed, because it talks about how she actually gets a crush on a guy and he turns out to be a villain. So but I recommend it to anybody who likes supers but you're looking for something different, like, or if you liked Batgirl from Burnside, you probably like Ms. Marvel.
Okay, so I'm currently reading The Villain Turns the Hourglass, and this is actually a web novel that has been adapted into a manga that's online, and it's from my very favorite genre that we'll get into later. But it's about a poor girl whose mother gets remarried to a count, and her whole life changes. But what happens is not very fun. She ends up getting murdered by her stepsister, but magically an hourglass changes her time 10 years back so that she has a chance to not go down the same path. So in order to, well, enrich her life and also get vengeance, she plans to out-villain the villainess, her sweet sister Miel. So we get to watch Arya go through so many master plans and plots and meet a lot of cool friends along the way. Watching her grow is something that is just heart-wrenching, because she's walking a thin line between justice and vengeance. So if you have like a love for Batman and how he always comes back, you'll definitely love Arya. She's got spunk, she's got fire, and I wouldn't put anything past her.
So do we find out if she is in fact a villain, or if she becomes more like?
Well, it's very strange, because who's supposed to be a hero is her sister Miel, but she's only in the face. So she's very kind, she's sweet, she does all these, efforts to appear kind, but she really is evil. Whereas Arya is already perceived as the bad guy, because who is this girl that came out of nowhere and now she's the Countess' daughter. So it depends. I'm always gonna root for the bad guy because I'm a big Joker fan, but Arya isn't as ruthless as Miel is, and I'm very curious how it's going to be done. I'm trying not to read the web novel because the manga is taking way too long to update. I might end up reading it. We'll know.
Very cool. We're going to go into our second segment and discuss some of our recent award winners. And we're going to start off with Rebecca, and she's going to talk about Prince and the Dressmaker, which is a Black-Eyed Susan book. Please take it away, Rebecca.
Okay, so one of the best books I read in the past year was The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. This is a great book if you're a tween or a teen, but it's about a young prince and his parents want him to marry. And instead, he has an alter ego named Lady Crystalia. So he goes in drag to all the Paris balls and becomes this fashion icon. But the stress of having to make the most fabulous outfits in Paris and keep the secret starts to weigh in on the friendship between the prince and the dressmaker. So it's a very sweet genderqueer book, and I highly recommend it.
And that's a Black-Eyed Susan nominee, is that correct, Rebecca?
Yes, this was a Black-Eyed Susan nominee.
And you were telling me recently about how you're part of that committee. Can you speak to what are Black-Eyed Susan books?
Yeah, absolutely. Black-Eyed Susans are the school library book award for the state of Maryland. Every state has one, and they're usually named after the state flower. So ours is called the Black-Eyed Susans. And what's unique about our award as compared to other states is that other states have a committee that reads and usually decides on what they think is the best book. What we do is we pick the 10 best books, and then we let the kids decide what is going to be the winner.
Awesome. That seems accurate to me. That's what better way to find out what the best book is than to
exactly
let them decide. Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca. We're then going to come to Storm, who's going to talk about Sleepless.
Hello. Okay, so for my recommendation is Black-Eyed Citizens Sleepless. It's a 2020-2021 nominee by Sarah Vaughn for the grade level 6 to 9. And it's about Lady Pipini. I'm going to slaughter these names, forgive me. Hypenia, otherwise known as Poppy, who is guarded by her sleepless night, and a sleepless night is someone who they can't physically go to sleep. That their job is to protect whoever they're assigned to, and his name is Cyrenik. So when they find out that an assassin is after her, they both basically go into detective mode, and they're trying to figure out who is going after her after her father passed away, and it's a new king. So she's wondering someone's trying to take her out as well, because she might be a possibility for the throne. And along the way, they start to maybe possibly fall in love, and it's really cute. I love it because it has the main character is a person of color, and I love it so much. It's so cute. I highly recommend it.
Your enthusiasm is contagious, and I want to go read that book right now. Thank you, Storm. And Lauren's going to go into one of the 2019 Eisner winners.
Hi, everyone. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Giant Days. That was written by John Allison and Whitney Koger, with Lissa Treman illustrating. So I wanted to start off by saying that it won Best Continuing Series through the Eisner Awards in 2016 and 2019, I believe. And then in 2019, it received the Best Humor Award. There's a really great review on the now defunct Comic Bastards blog, which looked at what made Giant Days so special in the context of YA. And I have to agree, I'm really, really paraphrasing this, so I hope that it makes sense, but Giant Days doesn't overindulge in drama and these tropes of like overly caustic and sarcastic themes that we sometimes see in YA. And instead, it really examines this like hodgepodge of curiosity and excitement and the painful confusion that comes with that transformative phase in your life. And in this case, it's college. And so how these times also tend to bond us with others that we may not have otherwise been drawn to, and the little nuances that makes up these very strange friendship groups that we form in our lives and how they work. So it focuses on 3 friends. One named Esther, who's kind of like the fashionable goth girl. She's always falling in love, and she seems to be getting into a lot of mischief. There's Susan, who's a little bit more grounded, but she's actually very, very messy. She has this tough exterior, but she's really delicate on the inside. And for some odd reason, she reminds me a little bit of Eve from Killing Eve. Which would probably make Graham Nico. And they're both part of the Mustache Club, so I definitely see that. And then finally, there's Daisy, who's this studious, shy, former homeschool student who's like really, really optimistic and has those rose-colored glasses, but she's not obnoxiously so about it. And Daisy actually starts to question her sexuality, and she does end up dating a woman. So it's great for LGBTQ plus representation. But overall, it's just a beautiful story about 3 friends trying to figure it out.
Sounds very real. Thanks so much, Lauren, for the very thoughtful review of that book. That was excellent.
Thank you.
And Amanda is going to talk about another Black-Eyed Susan book for us today.
Okay, so I'm talking about Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zakia. And this one isn't strictly a graphic novel. It is a teen novel that includes pages from the main character's webcomic. So she is the author of a webcomic, and she has taken great lengths to conceal her identity because she's only in high school, but she has gained a massive following across the world. Her day-to-day life is very usual and pretty much introverted, but her webcomic is very fantastic and has had a great impact on other people's lives. So she's a little stuck in how she presents herself, but she meets somebody who is a great fan, and seems to understand her work in a way so deeply that he understands her as well. She starts kind of getting out of her shell to talk to other people, until a very public event happens that unfortunately reveals her identity, and she has to figure out how to navigate the sudden combination of her online identity and her public and her day-to-day life.
That sounds like a very relevant story for kind of what we're experiencing right now. Are we the same person that we present online? And that's kind of a topic that teenagers are constantly navigating, because people are tied so closely with who they think they are and who they think they should be. That this is a kind of a fantastic theme that runs through a lot of young adult fiction. So it's great to hear that comics and manga are kind of treating that theme and doing it justice as well. Thanks, Amanda.
Welcome to Genre Discovery, where we talk about different genres that we may have not known about. Recently, I've discovered isekai, which is the Japanese genre of comics, well, manga, of a new world. So what happens is our main characters are dropped into either a new world, which could be a fantasy land, or a future of unknown sorts, or they're dropped into something usually very familiar, like their favorite book or their favorite video game. It's always very interesting because there's something new to learn about the world that they did not know as a reader. But now that there are main players in the actual show or video game or book, they can actually make changes to the real plot. So currently, I am reading Iris, the Lady with a Smartphone. So she's transported into a fairyland, fairy fantasy land, but no one's ever heard of a smartphone. There's no electricity. Everything is ran with magic. So when she discovers this smartphone, she's called an unleasher. And the unleashers are people who were transported from another world with these smartphones or tablets or things like that that people have never seen before.
That's interesting. I have been reading isekai that usually have one person who's the main character being the only person from another world. I haven't seen a lot of them where there have been multiple people transported, especially not as a group, but in different places.
Oh, that's the best kind, because you're wondering, are they going to help me or are they going to hurt me? Because sometimes when the person is transported or reincarnated into a different role than they expected, they end up coming against each other. For example, in say the villainess is adored by the crown prince, another one that I am reading, a regular Japanese girl is reincarnated into the daughter. She is a daughter of a duchess and a duke, and she's the villain, but she's a good girl. So she's forced into a role that she doesn't want to be in. And then she has other people that she meets, and they're from the same world, but they are trying to be the hero. So they're chasing after each other, whether they want to or not. It brings a whole different dynamic, and it makes you really question what is good and what is evil.
Sound like some interesting series.
It's very, it can become very psychological, but it also can be very fun and cute, because who wouldn't enjoy casting spells and having a smartphone at the same time? Like, I wouldn't pass that up.
It seems like a lot of the isekai these days, one of the common themes is that a person from a modern world or a technological world gets dropped into a place where there's magic. And I'm a fan of magic, so that interests me a lot. And generally, the magic is something that the protagonist can use. Are there any series you know where the protagonist can't use magic when the world has it?
Yes, there are. There are plenty. Off the top of my head, I believe there is. There is a manga where once again it's a villainess, but her powers are everybody's powers are elemental, and everybody else's powers are pretty strong. Where she's supposed to, do earth and make mountains spread apart, but she can only kind of like bump the ground. So she has to use her friends and get along with them to help her make things happen. And once again, the heroine, she borderline, we can't tell if she's good or bad, but because the villainess is such a good person, their new reincarnation of her, they all get along pretty well. They end up being very close friends.
I've also noticed a couple things about, well, some isekai are series where the protagonist is there to learn something about themselves or about the world. Other isekai are things where the protagonist changes their world, where they bring in new ideas and change the society, possibly for the better, or it's just to change their own life and gain social status and power. Which are your favorite?
I would have to say I am a sucker for people who are given everything, but the only thing they want to do is to get away. I'm currently reading another one. I read a lot of these where the character finds out that she was reincarnated to be a princess. She's supposed to marry the crown prince, and he brings another girl to their engagement party. And, this is usually the biggest trope in the isekai manga is the crown princess finds out that her prince is cheating. She falls to ruin because she no longer has the title. The other woman, the consort, ends up becoming the queen, and her whole life is basically, the protagonist's life is ruined. But she sees this as a get out of jail free card because she no longer has to do any work. No more etiquette classes, no more dancing classes, no more people looking at her crazy because she can actually run and use her legs, So she says, adios, I'm out of here. She gets on her horse, she takes her favorite maid, and they go fishing. So it only has one chapter, and I'm kind of very excited to see what happens next because the prince actually chases after her. That normally doesn't happen. Half of us, the best part about isekai right now, and from the source that I watch it from, is that you can comment on Discus at the bottom of the chapter. So you can get into discussions with other people, other readers who may have the same view, a different view, or might know something or caught something that you didn't. And so far, there are a lot of great reviews. We're all very excited. We're really hoping that the prince, goes away because we just want the princess to enjoy her vacation. And so the title of the story is I Want to Escape from Princess Training.
So that sounds like a great genre. I know we have maybe a few more books that fit that genre. Amanda, can you give us a couple suggestions?
Yeah, so since isekai is basically a portal fantasy where someone from one world goes to another, whether it's through a magical portal or through reincarnation, or even getting trapped in a video game, there have been a whole lot of things over the decades that people have written about or illustrated. Going back as far as, say, Alice in Wonderland, that could be considered an isekai because someone from England goes to Wonderland. Some classic series are things like Magic Knight Rayearth, Inuyasha, Fushigi Yugi, or if you want to go to the shonen side, Digimon or Kyo Caramel. More recently, there are things where people get trapped in virtual worlds like Dot Hack Sign or Sword Art Online. And there's also a whole bunch of new series like Knights and Magic, Ascendance of a Bookworm, ReZero, A Witch's Printing Office. You could list a whole bunch of things, but they're all enjoyable in their own ways.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you like Sword Art Online, I would go to the original, which was .hack world, because that came before Sword Art Online. It's basically the same kind of multiple people who go into the game world. And for .hack, I believe the people start to go into comas in real life. So they're trying to figure out what's going on with the gamers. It's really, really good. And it's actually a video game series that I've actually played.
All right, so in our next segment, we're going to pick apart manga and anime and compare and contrast them.
Okay, so I'm going to start off the compare and contrast with one of my personal favorites. It's called Number 6. It's actually a manga series I own. It's an anime as well, and it was actually originally started as a novel by Atsuko Asano. And then the manga was drawn by Hinoki Kino. It is so good. It's a dystopian, which is one of my favorite genres. It's about a boy named Shion who was raised in the privileged city Number 6. And one day, another boy breaks into his house. This is when he's about a grade school student. And Shion finds out that the boy Nezumi is a fugitive running away from the authorities. He doesn't know why he's a fugitive, and the boy won't say. But he takes shelter, and unfortunately that leads to be Shion's downfall, because he was harboring, oh my gosh, I can't say that word. Harboring a fugitive. His family basically gets bumped down in status. They have to move from the rich neighborhood that they currently live in, and they get placed into, I guess, I think the lowest rung portion of Number 6 city. Anyway, flash forward again. It flashes forward to when Shion's a teenager now, and he comes across something bizarre. At least this is the anime portion where he comes across where people are dropping dead and aging in like a second, and they age so quickly that they die. And he's like, what's going on? This is supposed to be, the city is supposed to be a utopia. And so when he tries to address it to the authorities, they immediately are trying to shush it. They're like, that's not okay. And so they take him away. And Shion's scared that he can't say goodbye to his mom, and they start taking him away to who knows where. And this is where Nezumi comes in, and he basically saves Shion and takes him out of the city. And the manga and novel and anime follow where basically Shion learns his whole worldview is totally not what he thought it was. Nezumi, he lives in it is called, oh Lord, I'm trying to find the word, the West Block, which is basically outside of the city, and it's like, the land isn't, there's no trees, it's like rocky, it's a terrible place to live in. And Shion learns that the people, the authorities, I guess, that lead Number 6, they don't like people who go out of turn. So they try to work together to find out what's causing people to drop dead in the city. Shion wants to save it, but Nezumi wants the city to basically go up in flames, because Nezumi, Shion finds out he was hurt by the people of Number 6. And I don't want to go too much further into it, but it's really good. For compared contrast, I like the manga a lot more because it's more detailed for characters' progression. Also, it's a lot darker. The anime kind of makes it a bit lighter than both the novel and the manga. I like that the manga talks more about like classism and the things that West Block people have to do to survive, like prostitution. And in the anime, they kind of skim over that, which is interesting because usually anime has like no bounds for like the kind of stuff they go into. So I don't know why they made it like they kind of glossed over it in the anime. So I definitely recommend the manga and the novel. I have not read the novel yet, but I do know a lot about how it delves into more so the their thoughts and what they think about each other, that the manga kind of touches on, and then the anime kind of goes into totally different subplots that weren't even in the manga or novel. Like there's like this bee that's like a spirit, like a forest spirit that is trying to destroy number 6, and that wasn't really a plot at all in the manga and novel. So it's interesting that they kind of spun the government into this entity that wants to like rip up number 6 and tear down the walls that are surrounding the city. And there's a subplot with one of the side characters with her grandmother that wasn't in the manga or novel either, but it kind of becomes really important and in the anime because it actually shows how they actually treat their citizens. Her grandmother, because she ages, she's no longer really someone that can contribute to society. So they place them in a home, and it's an elderly home, but after a couple of days, you learn that they start to kill off the elderly. Because they're no longer useful to the society. So again, that's dark themes for this dystopian manga and novel and anime, but it's really good to, it's really interesting to go into it.
Wow, that was amazing. And right at the end, it reminded me of Lois Lowry's The Giver with, their distreatment of the, older generation.
A lot of dystopian societies in fiction tend to participate in elder side because they see them as not useful anymore. I've read at least 3 that have them get given slow building poison so that they can get rid of the older people.
And that's a good thing that you pointed out, Amanda, because one of the major things about West Block is that the government, number 6, even though they're outside, West Block is outside of the utopian society, they still come in and do cleaning weeks where they basically bulldoze down all the homes and kill the people, and they take the people, basically carting them by trucks into what Shion finds out later in the manga and anime and novel is that they start to dispose of just everyday citizens in West Block because they see them as basically like bugs, like they're insignificant. So they start to kill off the population that lives in West Block.
It's pretty grim.
I am buying this today.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this book. It sounds amazing.
It is amazing.
Really, really good.
So it's like the good kind of heartbreak, like the Walking Dead type of heartbreak, and I'm gonna sign up for that. Thanks.
Yeah.
I need tissues.
Something that may contribute to the differences between the anime and the manga, I believe that the manga was given as much space as it needed to finish out its chapters.
Yeah.
I think the anime was foreshortened because it has 11 episodes instead of the usual 12 or 13 that are given in a single season. So I think they had to wrap up some storylines pretty quickly. I don't know how they got the outside storylines though.
They tried to really cram in everything. And another point that's kind of grim about it is like I like how as the manga and anime progress, Shion and Nozumi's kind of perspectives and how they view the world start to switch. So Shion becomes kind of disillusioned and bitter about how things are, while Nozumi starts to get his kindness and he wants to like try to start to save people. And it gets to a point, a difference that the manga versus the anime is the manga gets really dark because Shion gets so bad that he tries to like commit suicide when he's in the center, the situation that they both end up in when he sees what's going on with how they're treating the West Block people, and Nozumi has to stop him from doing that. And the anime, they touch on it a little bit about Shion losing his sense of reality, but the manga really hits hard.
In the anime, he's willing to kill for Nozumi.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's a good point, Amanda, is that it also has LGBTQ themes because Nozumi and Shion grow really close together.
I'm always struck by how you can get certain parts of the story from manga that you can't get from anime, or vice versa. Because I'm a big anime fan. I love Bleach. My husband and I are big fans of Bleach. But when I read the manga, I was pleasantly surprised that like a lot of the filler arcs that took so much time in the anime aren't in the manga. So you don't have to deal with all this extra story that doesn't really make sense. Whereas the one that I'm currently obsessed with, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, everybody is way ahead of me on the story because I'm just waiting for the anime. I'm waiting for the new seasons to get animated.
So one of the things that makes a big difference in adapting manga and anime that you don't necessarily see in Western comics is that manga tends to get released chapter by chapter, and the anime can often be released at the same time or very soon after. And you have a phenomenon where the anime can catch up with the manga, and you don't actually know what comes next in the story. So one way that the anime differs is they can put in a filler arc where things happen that don't make a whole lot of difference to the story. They're just
Filler.
keep people's engagement with the same characters while they wait for new content to be released. Or they can go off track and have what's called a Gecko Ending, which gets its name because the series can shed the alternate stuff like a gecko sheds its tail. That's what happened in the case of Full Metal Alchemist, where the original 2003 anime caught up with the manga, and the original author actually helped the anime team create an entirely new story for the anime. So you'll see that during the Great Arc, the 2003 anime goes off on a completely different tangent from the manga. The whole basis for the system of alchemy is different. The themes are different, and the ending bears little to nothing with relation to the manga. It's still a good story. It's a wonderful story. And then later, like a decade later, I believe, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood was released, which is an anime that also follows the manga, but this one follows the manga to its end, its true end. So you have two great series, but one has a completely different set of characters and a different ending, and it makes for amazingly different experiences depending on which series you watch based on the same story.
You guys really make me want to like watch anime. I don't watch it, I read it. So now I'm like, because I would always like, I'll binge it for like maybe, it took me like 8 years to watch Game of Thrones because I'll binge something and then leave it alone for 2 years. So now I'm like, I watched Full Metal, actually, yeah, I think I did read Full Metal Alchemist. And then I also did watch the first season, but I did not know where to go afterwards because you had all these other stuff. And I mean, I can't do filler. I read 440 chapters of Bleach and I just said, I can't do it. I can't do it.
Yep.
And I love a long manga. I mean, some of the ones I read have like 300 and all that great numbers, but if you don't, I can't do it. Just can't.
Yeah. There's other cases like Blue Exorcist. That has an anime that goes for the usual 26 episodes of a full 2 seasons, but it diverges from the manga because it caught up. The thing that's unusual about that is that it seems to come to a real stop, but that wraps up the series. But they recently had what's called the Kyoto Arc as a new anime, and that just completely disregards the last 9 or so episodes of the original anime, and pretends it didn't happen and just goes off from where the manga was.
But yeah, one of the worst case, I think, scenarios for anime to manga would probably be Black Butler Kurosuchuji.
Yeah.
Because, oh my gosh, that goes all because the manga's still going today, and the anime first came out, I think when the manga was still, when it first was coming out, 2008. And so they were trying to do it actually like a season thing, but then they found out, whoa, wait a minute, we're way we're caught up to the manga at that point back in 2008. So they had to wait a couple of years in between, and then they started to do the book of Circus, Book of Murder, which actually are individual story arcs in the manga, which they should have done from the start, but
Yeah, they broke my heart with that one.
Okay, for our final segment today, everybody, we're going to do a share out, and we're going to focus on comics and their importance to the LGBTQ plus community.
Hey, so both me and Lauren, Lauren has actually read this recently, so she might have a better memory of this one than I do. I read it a couple, 2 years ago, I think. It is called Taproot. It's by Kizzy Young. It follows the story of Blue, a ghost haunting his best friend, Hamal. Lucky for Blue, though, Hamal actually can see spirits. Hamal is a gardener. I guess like a florist, a gardener. Lauren, would you
florist.
Florist, and he actually the spirits like talking to him because they feel at ease. They like being listened to. He's a very calming presence, and Blue, he doesn't want to move on. He just wants to stay with Hamal, by Hamal's side because he actually kind of loves Hamal. And I really love the combination of supernatural and LGBTQ. That's kind of like my favorite genre about this. Lauren, what did you think about it since you read it recently?
So one of the big themes I thought was this ability to move away from the fear of allowing the two of them, Blue and Hamal, the fear of allowing themselves to be vulnerable or afraid that who they are or what they have to offer isn't valuable to the other person. And in doing so and kind of moving away from that, they're able to help others and find their way or help others find their way and kind of transition forward in the same way that they are able to do. And then again, I know we talked about this earlier, but I loved Reaper. I just think it's so cheeky and so funny. But you summarized it beautifully. And
another main plot of this book is that there starts to become a danger within the ghost community. There's things that are starting to go wrong, and Blue becomes scared because Hamal might get hurt from this, and so they have to try to figure out what is going on. And it's been 2 years, but I think it was because Hamal had didn't he have like a special ability with the plants, and that was what was going kind of wonky.
It's something about, I don't know if it was the plants or the fact that he can see spirits. It's almost like having your body in two separate places, like you're alive.
I think it was because you bringing that up. I think it was because like he's a florist, so he brings things to life, and his ability to see ghosts, they were kind of clashing with each other. I think that was the main issue. And so it also became kind of a thing of which one would he give up, the ability to see his best friend or the ability to do something that he loves.
Just a note, Kizzy Young has also written a webcomic series, which is called Never Heroes, and that can be found on neverheroescomics.com and Sparkler.
Ooh, I'll have to check that one out. I read up when I was looking up on this Taproot again that they had done something else, and I love the art style of this so much. Like the colors are so vivid and beautiful, and the lines are so clean. I just definitely gonna have to check out the other one by this person.
Yes, I have to do the same. I've seen it. I have it set up and saved and ready to read. I just haven't had an opportunity yet, but I did want to share it just in case there is someone who's already read Taproot and loved it and wanted to read more.
So one series that I have read recently and very much loved is Our Dreams at Dusk, which is a manga written by Yuki Kamatani. And the main character is Tasuku Kaname. He is a closeted student at a Japanese high school, and somebody discovers basically gay porn on his cell phone, and so he is outed against his will and is forced to engage in sort of some homophobic deflection just so that his life isn't ruined. But it all becomes too much for him, and he runs away to find a sort of drop-in center, that's what they call it, of a bunch of people who just accept him no matter what he's dealing with or going through, or whether he wants to talk about it or not. It's sort of a way, one of their main tasks is that they renovate houses and places on this island that they live in, so that people will come back to the island and actually spend time there. And along the way, you find out more about all of the people who frequent the drop-in center. There's a lesbian couple, there's a trans man, there's a child who does not know what they really want to do with their gender presentation. And it's sort of a way for Tasku to figure out more about himself and heal, while also finding out more about these other people. And it has a lot of interesting situations that can provide guidance or just a window into other people's lives. For example, Tasku's crush finds out that Tasku does have a crush on him, and he reacts homophobically initially, but he isn't actually sure of his own sexuality himself. And there's also a plot where the trans man has somebody who knew him when he was in high school and hadn't yet transitioned, who wants to be an ally for him, but she keeps misgendering him. She puts him in situations where he's not comfortable, and they have to figure out a way to navigate past that. It's a wonderful series, and it's only 4 volumes, so I recommend it to anyone who wants to check it out.
Nice. Well, I would like to recommend another Black Eyed Susan nominee, As the Crow Flies by Melanie Gilman, who also did Steven Universe comics. But it's about a 13-year-old girl named Charlie, who's Black and queer, and whose parents have signed her up for a Christian, mostly white camp. And so she's going there, she's questioning her sexuality, she's questioning her beliefs and her faith in God. She isn't much of the hiking type, and yet, you know, she's at like a hiking summer camp. She also makes friends with a trans girl who is there at camp with her. But it's really just quietly beautiful. Really love the artwork. There's talks that there might be more in the series, so stay tuned for that.
And I have one more to recommend, and that is Moonstruck by Grace Ellis, Shay Beagle, and Kate Less. So Moonstruck takes place in a world of mythical, magical creatures and people. The central focus is on Julie, who is a werewolf barista and who appears to be ashamed of her werewolfness, and who is infatuated with a mystery series that's called Pleasant Mountain Sisters, or the Pleasant Mountain Sisters. And a part of the series is kind of interspersed in the story with kind of parallels to the mystery that's taking place in the foreground. So in the first volume, we see Julie go on a second date with her love interest and later girlfriend, Selena, to a mysterious magic show whose presenters have dangerous intentions for the members of the magical community. From my perspective, it seems like each graphic may be a different mystery. However, Volume 3, which I am currently waiting on as patiently as humanly possible, seems to be a continuation of a mystery that takes place in Volume 2, and that ending was a cliffhanger. A standout character is Chet, and Chet is a centaur. Chet uses they, them, their pronouns. The artwork in this is fantastic. The color is brilliant, and I wish that I had Julie's wardrobe. And I would say, and that is really stands out to me, is the depictions of some of the disagreements, the doubts, and issues that can plague both new and old relationships. I appreciate that the characters are doing their best to identify ways to work through it, though, and they seem willing to do so. And another big thing that I love is the diversity in ethnicity and body shapes of the characters, and kind of these non-tropey last names. Like, it's not like Julie isn't Julie Werewolfsbane. It's something, it's just a general last name, and I really, really appreciate that. And for as obnoxious as he may be, I really like, there's a little vampire bat named Mark, and he has a fart in the face tactic that he uses to get out of situations that he doesn't want to be in. He is an absolute mess, but I really love him as a character. I can't help it. So I encourage people to check out Moonstruck. Like I said, that you have, there are lesbian characters. You have someone who is possibly non-binary, and it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful world.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for our wonderful staff. Thank you to Dréa, Amanda, Lauren, Rebecca, and Storm. Y'all have imparted such wonderful wisdom and context, and hopefully our teenagers have a better grasp of what comics, manga, and anime really is all about. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We appreciate you all.
Thanks for having us.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Excitement and adventure are around every corner this summer at your library. Create your own literary wonderland at home. Immerse yourself in our never-ending online library. Learn new skills, explore virtual events, and connect with your community in a whole new way. Starting May 18th, the Prince George's County Memorial Library System and the Washington Nationals bring summer